Good morning or good afternoon today. I want to share something foundational, something that underpins every goal, every ambition, and every version of success we pursue. Success begins in the mind. This isn't a metaphor, it's biology, it's psychology, it's neuroscience, and the good news is you don't need to be born with it. You can build it. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change its structure and function in response to experience, learning, and intentional effort. This concept overturns the old belief that our brains are fixed after a certain age. In reality, the human brain remains adaptable throughout life. Neurons can forge new connections, strengthen old ones, and even form entirely new circuits in response to repeated actions, thoughts, and emotional patterns. This means that who you are today, your habits, mindset, reactions, even your sense of identity, is not permanent. It's a snapshot, not a sentence. If you consistently think in certain ways, whether productive or limiting, your brain will literally wire itself to make those thought patterns easier to access. This is why negative self-talk, doubt, or fear can become so automatic. But it's also why, with intention, you can reverse those patterns and replace them with ones aligned with growth, discipline, and confidence. Every time you focus your attention on something new, struggle to learn a skill, or stretch yourself beyond what's comfortable, your brain responds by adapting. New synapses are formed, existing ones are refined. The more often you repeat the behavior or thought, the stronger the wiring becomes. It's a use it or lose it system, and it's always on. This gives you power. You are not limited by your past or your natural inclinations. With deliberate effort, you can train yourself to become more focused, more resilient, more creative. Whatever success demands, your brain is not a blueprint, it's a construction site. And you are both the architect and the builder. Mental rehearsal, or the act of visualizing success, is more than just a motivational exercise. It's a powerful tool for rewiring the brain. When you vividly imagine yourself executing a task, whether it's giving a presentation, winning a competition, or simply staying calm under pressure, your brain activates many of the same neural pathways it would if you were actually doing it. In other words, the brain doesn't completely differentiate between real experience and imagined experience when the visualization is detailed and intentional. This means that when you consistently visualize success, not just the outcome, but the process, it strengthens the neural circuits involved in performing that task. You're not just thinking positive, you're building a mental map that your body and nervous system can follow. The more clearly you imagine each step, the environment, the challenges, your responses, the more effectively your brain can prepare for the real event. But there's a key distinction. Successful mental rehearsal doesn't just mean picturing victory. It means mentally walking through discomfort, setbacks, and recovery. It means seeing yourself adapt and persist in the face of difficulty. That's what makes the visualization stick. When the brain senses realism, not fantasy. Elite performers use this method regularly. Musicians mentally rehearse pieces before ever touching an instrument. Athletes run plays in their mind before stepping onto the field. Why? Because repetition in the mind accelerates execution in real life. Over time, it can improve confidence, reduce anxiety, and enhance actual performance. It's a way of getting in reps without burning energy, reducing the fear of failure by replacing unknowns with a known internal script. In a world that often rewards action, it's easy to dismiss visualization as passive, but the truth is, it's one of the most active ways you can shape your brain toward success. If done with stress, is often seen as something to avoid, but the truth is that not all stress is harmful. In fact, when understood and harnessed correctly, stress can become a powerful tool for growth, adaptation, and focus. The human brain is built to respond to challenges. When we encounter something difficult or unfamiliar, our nervous system activates a stress response designed to heighten alertness and sharpen attention. In controlled amounts, this response can improve performance and help encode learning more deeply. When you engage with a task that pushes your limits, whether it's a physical challenge, a high-stakes conversation, or deep work, your brain releases specific neurochemicals like norepinephrine and adrenaline. These chemicals narrow your focus and amplify the brain's ability to process information. In other words, the right kind of stress creates the ideal internal environment for growth. The key is not to eliminate stress, but to manage and use it intentionally. This is where mindset comes into play. How you interpret stress directly shapes how your body and brain respond to it. If you view stress as a threat, something to escape from, your body leans toward fear, anxiety, and shutdown. But if you view stress as a signal that you're stretching, adapting, and moving toward growth, your brain interprets it as a challenge and begins laying down new learning pathways. This is especially important in environments that demand consistent performance under pressure. Learning to stay calm, breathe deliberately, and refocus attention in stressful moments not only improves outcomes, it conditions your brain to tolerate more challenge without breaking down. That's real resilience, not the absence of stress, but the ability to stay engaged through it. Ultimately, success depends not on avoiding stress, but on understanding how to train your brain to move through it. The mind that grows is the one that knows how to face challenge and stay focused anyway. Dopamine is often misunderstood as simply the brain's pleasure chemical, but its real power lies in something much deeper: motivation and pursuit. Dopamine is what drives you to act, to chase goals, to keep going even when the results aren't immediate. It's the neurochemical of wanting, and not just liking. And learning how to work with it, rather than be ruled by it, is a core part of building lasting success. Every time you take a step toward a meaningful goal, your brain has the opportunity to release dopamine. But here's the critical part: the highest performing individuals don't wait until the goal is achieved to feel rewarded. Instead, they train themselves to release dopamine during the process, in the effort itself. When the brain learns to associate progress, discipline, and discomfort with reward, it becomes much easier to stay consistent over time. That's the shift from needing motivation to creating it. Most people fall into the trap of chasing outcomes, the promotion, the award, the recognition. And while those things can spike dopamine temporarily, they don't lead to sustainable drive. The spike fades. What matters more is learning to find reward in the act of showing up, pushing limits, and being in motion, even when the finish line is nowhere in sight. This is not just a psychological trick, it's biological training. When you begin to consciously recognize and even celebrate small milestones, getting started when you didn't feel like it, finishing a difficult session, sticking to the plan, you're reinforcing the dopamine system to support forward action. Over time, the brain learns effort equals reward, and that loop keeps you going, even through plateaus, setbacks, or boredom. The most successful people aren't those who wait for motivation to arrive. They're the ones who understand how to generate it internally, on demand. By managing dopamine, by linking reward to the process, you shift from being controlled by fleeting feelings to being powered by intentional effort. And that's when momentum becomes automatic. Discomfort is often misinterpreted as a sign that something is wrong, when in reality, it's one of the clearest indicators that growth is occurring. The human brain is designed to adapt to challenge, but only when it's exposed to challenge consistently and deliberately. This is the same principle behind physical training. You apply controlled stress to the body, and it grows stronger in response. The mind works the same way. When you intentionally engage with discomfort, mental, emotional, or physical, you create the conditions that drive neuroplasticity forward. Every time you face a difficult task, resist a tempting distraction, or lean into something that scares you, your brain receives a powerful message: this is worth adapting to. Neurons begin firing in new patterns, and the connections that support resilience, focus, and discipline become more efficient. Over time, what was once uncomfortable becomes normal. Your threshold for stress rises. Your capacity for sustained effort expands. This is how high performers separate themselves, not by avoiding discomfort, but by seeking it out in a controlled and purposeful way. One of the most effective ways to train this adaptation is through what's called deliberate discomfort. That could mean taking cold showers, engaging in intense focus sessions, having hard conversations, or committing to long-term habits with no immediate payoff. The activity itself is less important than the mindset. I am choosing to do something hard on purpose because it shapes who I am becoming. Each exposure to discomfort is like a rep at the gym for your nervous system. The brain registers, adapts, and becomes more capable of handling complexity, pressure, and uncertainty. The more consistently you do this, the more you build an identity around it. Discomfort becomes familiar territory, not something to avoid, but something to work through. In a world that constantly pushes us toward ease and instant gratification, this kind of mental training is a competitive edge. It's how you build grit. It's how you stay grounded in chaos. It's how you prepare your brain to handle the real challenges that success inevitably brings. Sleep is often treated as an afterthought, something to cut short when deadlines approach or ambition kicks in. But in reality, it's one of the most critical pillars of mental performance, emotional regulation, and long-term success. While you're asleep, your brain is far from inactive. It's engaging in some of the most important work it ever does, consolidating memories, pruning unnecessary neural connections, strengthening useful ones, and clearing out metabolic waste that accumulates during waking hours. In short, sleep is when neuroplasticity is stabilized and reinforced. When you're learning something new, whether a skill, a strategy, or a behavior, the brain begins forming neural pathways while you're awake. But those pathways don't fully take hold until you sleep. That's when short-term traces of learning are converted into long-term architecture. Without adequate sleep, the circuits that success depends on, focus, decision, making, emotional resilience, begin to falter. You might still be working, but the quality of that work suffers, often in ways you can't immediately see. There's also a critical relationship between sleep and your emotional regulation system. Poor sleep increases the reactivity of the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing threat and fear, and decreases communication with the prefrontal cortex, which governs rational thinking. This makes it harder to stay calm under pressure, harder to focus, and harder to persist through difficulty. In contrast, high-quality sleep literally restores your brain's capacity to deal with stress and complexity the next day. Think of sleep not as downtime, but as a high-performance tool. Just as athletes train hard and then recover strategically, high-functioning minds need rest in order to perform at the edge of their ability. Sleep isn't a weakness, it's a multiplier. It sharpens your ability to learn, adapt, and execute. It's the recovery window where the brain integrates everything it absorbed while awake and prepares for even greater demands ahead. If you're serious about success, not just fast success, but sustainable, meaningful growth, then you have to treat sleep like the non-negotiable training it is. Because no matter how hard you work, if your brain is under-recovered, it's working against you, not for you.